Welcome to Tales of the Bard. Step into a world where stories come alive and imagination knows no bounds. Join me as I weave enchanting tales reminiscent of the bards of old, sharing legends, myths, and original stories that will transport you to distant lands and forgotten times. As they walk through the peaceful fields, leaving the dark tree and its lingering threat behind, Lauren turned to his brother, his curiosity getting the better of him. "What will she do with the crow?" he asked, glancing back in the direction Skryla had flown. Ronan smiled reassuringly. "Skryla is a very powerful druid. I imagine she'll try to get some information from it first, figure out what it has seen, what it has heard." He paused, giving Lauren a reassuring look. "But don't worry, she won't hurt it. Once she's learned what she can, she'll likely heal it. She may even recruit it into the druid network, using it as a spy to keep an eye on the dark network." Lauren looked relieved and intrigued. "So even Malgora's spies can change sides?" Ronan chuckled. "When Skryla's involved, anything is possible." The farmhouse came into view, warm and inviting against the fading light, a safe haven amidst the turmoil of their world. Lauren's face brightened at the sight, and his pace quickened as they approached. As they entered, the familiar faces of their companions greeted them. Elias, Milas, Alera, and Darian stood waiting, their expressions filled with a mixture of worry and anticipation. Lauren barely had time to take a breath before his parents wrapped him in a tight embrace. His mother's arms were warm and comforting, and his father's hand rested firmly on his shoulder, grounding him in the present. Tears glistened in Alera's eyes as she held him close. "Lauren, how?" Darian murmured, his voice choked with disbelief. He looked over his son, a mixture of relief and astonishment in his gaze. Then his expression shifted, a shadow of confusion crossing his face. "My leg. It didn't warn me." Darian's hand drifted to his thigh, where an old wound, cursed by dark magic, had left him with a constant ache. That pain had often signaled the presence of dark forces, a bond he had come to rely on. But now, with his son before him, the pain was simply gone. Alera noticed too. She stepped back, her emerald eyes flicking to Darian's leg, her healer's intuition flaring. "Darian, your wound." Tentatively, Darian moved his leg, flexing it with cautious hope. His face softened with wonder. His old limp was nowhere to be found. The wound, a remnant of battles past, no longer hindered him. A look of quiet amazement passed between him and Alera, as if they could scarcely believe the weight that had lifted. "Whatever darkness held me is gone," Darian murmured, his voice thick with emotion as he looked at Lauren. "It's like you brought the light back with you, son." Lauren smiled, his eyes bright with gratitude. "Maybe being freed from Draxfus's spell healed us both." Ronan placed a hand on Lauren's shoulder, warm pride in his gaze. "It seems we've all gained something tonight," he said softly. As they settled into the farmhouse, the group shared a rare moment of peace, the bonds of family and friendship strengthened by their journey. Outside, the warwolves and battlebears patrolled, and the night grew calm, holding the promise of safety, at least for a while. The fire crackled warmly in the farmhouse hearth, casting a golden glow over the room as the group settled in for a rare night of peace. Jonty strummed his lute, his fingers dancing over the strings with practiced ease. The melodies he played were from a time long past, songs filled with hope and stories of peace, tales of an age before darkness had crept into their world. As he finished tuning his lute, Jonty flashed a grin at the others. "Who's up for some real music then?" Elias and Malus exchanged eager looks, and soon their voices rose to join Jonty's, filling the room with harmonies that wrapped around them like the warmth of the fire. Elias's voice was bright and youthful, a perfect counter to Milas's, which carried a soft, steady tone, grounding the music with graceful strength. Together they sang songs of old, tales of bravery, love, and the peace they all longed to see once more. The farmhouse felt lighter, laughter and music filling the air, their worries melting away, if only for a moment. Even Alera and Darian joined in on some of the songs, their voices lifting alongside their children's, woven together with Jonty's skillful playing. The evening became a tapestry of joy and camaraderie, each voice adding its own color to the stories they shared through song. By the time the last notes faded and the embers glowed softly in the hearth, they were all thoroughly exhausted. One by one, they retired to their rooms, leaving the farmhouse in gentle silence. Outside, Ronan and Darian took one last walk around the property, their eyes scanning the darkened fields and the edges of the forest. The warwolves and battlebears were stationed nearby, their silent presence a reminder of the protection surrounding them. The moonlight cast a silver sheen over the landscape, and for once there was no sign of lurking danger, only the quiet of the night. Ronan placed a hand on his father's shoulder, a sense of calm settling over him. "For tonight, at least," he said softly, "we're safe." Darian nodded, his gaze lingering on the peaceful scene before them. "Let's hope it lasts." With a final glance toward the starlit sky, they returned to the farmhouse, their hearts lighter, knowing they had each other, and for this one night, that was enough. When Ronan finally reached his room, the warmth and peace of the farmhouse settled over him, and he exhaled, grateful for a night's rest. But as he pushed the door open, he stopped, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. Curled up comfortably in the center of his bed was Nera, the old gray and white farm cat, her fur a soft mix of silver and snowy white, her eyes closed in serene contentment. "Nera," he chuckled softly, crossing the room. The old cat's ears flicked, and her eyes blinked open, locking onto him with a look of calm curiosity. He sat down on the edge of the bed and, out of habit, began to speak to her in wild speak, the druidic language that allowed him to connect with animals. "You look comfortable there, old friend," he murmured in a low, rhythmic tone. Nera's eyes lit up, and her tail flicked with excitement. The moment she heard the familiar cadence of Wildspeak, her meow turned into a series of animated purrs and chirps, responding eagerly to his words. "Oh yes," she began, her voice smooth and full of life. "I was just waiting for a warm place. You know how these farmhouses are, always too drafty in winter? This spot is perfect. And did you know the mice in the barn have had their litters already? They're going to be everywhere soon. But no one worries about that, of course, not with the birds chattering all day about the latest gossip. Did you know the robins think they're in charge of the whole place?" Ronan chuckled, nodding along, but soon he realized that starting a conversation with Nera had been a mistake. The old cat had stories for every season, tales of every animal she'd encountered over her years on the farm. She went on about the antics of the sheepdog, the badger family that had recently taken residence nearby, and the troublemaker squirrel who insisted on stealing from the bird feeder. He tried to steer the conversation to an end, but Nera continued, her voice filling the room with tales of mice families, nesting birds, and gossip from the field. Her whiskers quivered as she told him of the fox she had spotted sneaking around last spring and how she had chased him off herself, as though she were still as spry as a kitten. Finally, when her stories began to loop back to the same themes, Ronan managed a polite yawn, rubbing his eyes. "Thank you, Nera. I'll be sure to keep an eye on the robins and all their new plans. But I think it's time I got some sleep." Nera gave him a sleepy, approving look. "Of course, young one. You've been through enough tonight. But do remember, if the robins start nesting in your window, tell them Nera said that's strictly off limits." With a soft laugh, Ronan gave her a gentle scratch behind the ears. "Will do, Nera." As he finally settled into bed, Nera nestled in beside him, her purrs a steady, comforting hum that filled the room. With her warmth next to him and the peace of the farmhouse surrounding him, Ronan closed his eyes, drifting into sleep, his mind at ease for the first time in days. Ronan woke with a start, the stillness of the early morning broken by a low, rumbling growl beside him. He blinked, glancing down to see Nera, the old farm cat, puffed up to twice her usual size, her fur bristling and her gaze fixed intently on the window. Her tail lashed back and forth, her eyes narrowing in fierce determination. She looked ready to launch herself into a fight, her growls growing louder with every second. Ronan's heart skipped a beat as he followed her gaze. Outside, a faint figure hovered, tapping softly against the window. In the dim morning light, he could just make out the graceful form of a silver falcon perched on the ledge. Ronan exhaled in relief, his hand reaching out to soothe Nera. "It's all right, old girl," he murmured, running his hand along her back until her growls softened. "It's just Skryla." He moved to the window and gently pushed it open, allowing Skryla to glide through. Her feathers shimmered in the morning light, and as she touched down on the bed, she transformed, her wings blending seamlessly into arms, feathers giving way to skin as she shifted into her human form with practiced ease. Ronan noticed something different about her. She seemed younger, a soft glow emanating from her, a hint of new vitality. He raised an eyebrow, a smirk playing on his lips. "Did you visit the healing pool?" he asked knowingly. Skryla's cheeks flushed a faint pink, and she nodded, her expression a mix of pride and embarrassment. "It seems I couldn't resist. The pool's magic never fails to renew," she admitted with a shy smile. Nera, now fully relaxed, had transitioned from growling to purring, her large green eyes fixed on Skryla with intense curiosity, as if captivated by this intriguing new visitor. She crept closer, her tail flicking as she settled down beside Skryla, clearly taken with her. Skryla reached down to give Nera a gentle scratch behind the ears before turning back to Ronan. "I managed to get quite a lot of information from the crow," she began, her voice softening. Once it started talking, it was as if someone had opened a floodgate. Ronan's eyes sharpened, his tone serious. "Tell me everything." Skryla's expression darkened, her gaze steady. "I'm afraid it's bad news," she said, her voice laced with tension. "Malgora's intentions are more dangerous than we thought. She's planning to send an entire army through the dark network using the same tree Draxfus came through. It's no longer just a portal, it's a bridge for her forces." Ronan felt a chill run down his spine, his hand instinctively gripping his staff. "An army?" he murmured, his mind racing. "She'll overwhelm the land if she manages that." Skryla nodded grimly. "Yes, and she knows we've severed one connection, which means she'll be on high alert. If she manages to connect her forces to another hub, there may be no stopping her from flooding the realm with darkness." Nera, still purring contentedly, nudged Skryla's hand as if sensing her tension, her wide eyes watching her with what looked like quiet understanding. Ronan drew a deep breath, his mind already turning to strategies and allies they could call upon. "Then we have no time to waste," he said, his voice steady. "We'll need the druids, the warriors, everyone who stands against Malgora's forces. This time we don't just defend, we strike back." Skryla's eyes sparkled with determination, a fierce smile breaking through her serious expression. "Good, because I'm ready for a fight." Nera chirped as if in agreement, her tiny but fierce presence adding to the strength of their resolve. With their path now set, Ronan and Skryla shared a look of understanding. Together, they would do whatever it took to protect their world from the darkness Malgora threatened to unleash. As Ronan and Skryla made their way to the kitchen, the smell of fresh bread and warm herbs filled the air, mingling with the soft morning light streaming through the farmhouse windows. They stepped into the bustling kitchen to find the others already gathered around the table, bowls of steaming porridge, plates of eggs, and fresh-baked bread spread before them. Darian looked up, his gaze immediately settling on Skryla. A suspicious, teasing smile tugged at his lips as he noticed the two of them together. "When did she get here?" he asked, raising an eyebrow as he looked between them. Ronan couldn't help but smile. "She flew in this morning," he replied, casting a glance at Skryla, a hint of amusement in his voice. Skryla returned his look with a slight knowing smirk, but quickly shifted her focus as Ronan continued, his tone growing serious. "Anyway, I'm glad you're all here." Ronan pulled out a chair, motioning for Skryla to join them at the table. The others grew quiet, their attention shifting to her. Alara, Elias, and Milas leaned forward slightly, sensing the urgency in Ronan's voice. Even Jaunty, usually quick with a light-hearted remark, sat quietly watching Skryla with focused curiosity. Skryla took a deep breath, her gaze meeting each of theirs in turn. "Malgora's plan," she began, "is worse than we anticipated. She's not just using the dark trees to send spies or small forces into our lands. She intends to send a full army through her network, using the dark tree portals to overwhelm us with sheer numbers." A collective murmur spread around the table, worry etched on everyone's faces. Darian's hand clenched into a fist, his jaw tight. "An army," he muttered, barely containing his anger. "She intends to bring war to us." Skryla nodded, her expression grim. "Yes, and she knows that we've severed one of her portals. She'll be prepared for resistance. Her dark network is vast, linking to multiple hubs we've yet to uncover. If she's able to strengthen those connections, there's no telling how many of her forces she'll be able to move at once." Elias's eyes widened, his youthful face pale. "How can we possibly stop her if she's got all those portals?" Ronan placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We won't be facing her alone. We'll need to call on the druids, our allies, and every resource we have. If we cut off her connections one by one, we'll weaken her hold." Alara's eyes shone with quiet determination. "Then we gather everyone we can, the elves, the dwarves, the druids, even those who have left fighting behind. This is no ordinary threat." Skryla nodded, her gaze fierce. "And I'll be tracking each of those hubs. If we can close them fast enough, we may prevent her from mobilizing her forces. Darian gave a slow nod, his expression resolute. Then let's prepare. We've faced darkness before and we'll face it again. But this time we fight for more than just survival. We fight for a future. They exchanged solemn glances, each one feeling the weight of the task before them. Yet amidst the heavy resolve, a spark of hope flickered. Together they would rally their allies, sever Malgora's hold, and protect their realm from the looming shadow.